Did you ever wish there was a shortcut to help you understand what stops you from having what you want and keeps you from being your greatest self? Well, stay tuned because in this webinar, we're going to show you a very simple guide we call the Heart Path that's going to help you show up in your relationships with trustworthiness and consistency, to make consistent progress in your life versus one step forward, two steps back, and how to be powerfully present and live your mission and bring what's needed most in the moment to create positive change for yourself and for your world. Hi, I'm Anna Francesca Celestino, and I am a life coach, certified life coach. I'm also an author, and I'm the founder of the Shift System, a 90-day group coaching program for transformational change.
Hey, and I'm Rick Broniec. I am also a personal growth coach. I'm an author of 3 books. I am an inspirational speaker, and I've led trainings for men and women, thousands of them, all over the world on 11 countries and 5 continents. It's a joy to be with you here, Anna, and I can't wait to offer this fabulous webinar and the workshop that's going to come out of it. Absolutely.
I'm right with you, Rick. Rick and I, funny enough, we both had the opportunity to work with Cliff Berry, who was the originator of shadow work. It's a healing process to help work with 4 archetypal wounds that we have coming into our lives or as we go through our lives. And Cliff was just brilliant at coming up with a way to help you recognize the wound and move through it. And it was just sort of a coincidence that Rick and I connected and realized we both had done that training back in the early 90s. And I know, Rick, for me, I have used this map, this archetypal map that I got from Cliff, and also it was referenced, well, not referenced, it was in the book King, Warrior, Magician, Lover by
Moore and Gillette.
Yes, thank you.
Those guys.
Robert Moore and Doug Gillette, yes. And also Robert Bly spoke about, he had his book about, a little book, right, Human Shadow. So all of this archetypal work came about in the early 90s. And what I know for myself is this map that I got from doing that work early on has absolutely served me in the personal growth work that I've done with other people and myself to help me be able to navigate and find the shortcuts through very complex psyche stuff and be able to figure out what's going on, where the wound is, and how to get through it.
Absolutely, Anna. I've also used a very, very similar map for working with many, many, many men in the Mankind Project. It is the archetypal heart of what we do. So I'm glad that we're doing this.
Yeah, I felt compelled for years to share it because I feel like it's such a valuable tool, and I know, Rick, you feel the same way. And so we got together and put together a training that we're offering in May called Heart Path. Sorry, called the Heart Path. And we're going to be offering it. But today we want to give you some of the highlights of this map and hopefully some tools that will help you to sort of expand your ability to really show up, be present, and be powerful in your life. So should we start with the shadow?
Let's get to it.
Okay.
Well, the shadow is the part of myself that I hide, repress, and deny. Both the golden parts of myself and the dark parts of myself. The parts of myself I don't want to even acknowledge to myself. The shadow comes about due to messages that we take on in childhood, almost always in childhood, from the big people in our life, our parents, our grandparents, teachers, ministers, priests in our churches, and things like that, that tell us how we should be living our lives. What is acceptable and what's not, what behaviors are okay, what are not. And in doing so, we take on messages about ourselves that become deeply embedded. In fact, they're survival mechanisms for us that got us through being children. And the danger of that is that we continue to live by those shadow codes, even though as adults they're no longer necessary for our survival. An example would be how our churches often give us the message that sexuality is somehow sinful, bad, wrong, particularly outside of marriage, particularly if it's a man and a woman involved, other than a man and a woman involved, I should say. And many of us carry shame about our sexuality that keeps us from fully expressing our sexual selves, fully sharing who we are with our partners in a loving, joyful, playful way. I'll give an example of a shadow in my own life. very early on when I was 7 years old and my father left the family. He put me on his knee as the oldest child of 6 kids and said, "I'm leaving now, Rick. You're the man of the family. Take care of your mother and your siblings." I was 7 years old, and I dove into that entreaty from my father with everything I had to be the parent to my kids, isn't that funny? Parent to my siblings, and a surrogate partner to my mother in many ways. And that shadow, that was my proper role, and that it was something I had to do for my survival, got embedded so deeply in me that it took me a long time and a lot of work to dig out that shadow and find out the truth of my leadership, the authentic leader that's in me, not the one that has to do it, but the one that wants to do it for the right reasons. And I'm still working on that, Anna.
You know, Rick, something I didn't mention earlier on is that we start out whole, you know,
Right.
we start out in our fullness, but then we get all of these messages, like you're saying, that tell us to take good parts of ourselves and put them away. And then maybe we have to sort of distort ourselves to fulfill parts, like you're saying, that aren't natural to us. So by the time we're adults, who we are is not a real representation of who we really are. It's all of these distorted patterns and things and parts of ourselves that we stuffed, as Robert Bly would say, stuff it in the bag and put it into shadow. So the goal, you know, as far as I see, the only thing that's, you know, the only work that's really important right now is to get those parts of ourselves out so that we can fully be present in our lives. And so absolutely the shadow that I've been working with, you know, I've got a lover wound. I'm like a classic middle child lover wound. You know, there was my older sister, me, I was the baby of the family for 10 years. And then my parents had identical twin boys.
Wow.
and guess who got all the attention?
Mm-hmm.
My sister really knew how to get the attention. My brothers didn't have to do anything to get the attention. I often call the lover wound the invisible child.
Yes.
Because I feel like, you know, there's a point at which you just disappear and you feel like you're not seen. And so I think that's a wound that I've carried for a long time, is feeling like I'm not important, feeling like I'm not seen, feeling like people don't care about me, and kind of carrying that chip on my shoulder. And so, you know, it's affected marriages and all of that. And so I've really, you know, been doing my work to find my own value and to love myself, to feel worthy. And so, yeah, that's lots of good work there.
Yeah, it's obvious you've been doing that, Anna, because look what you're doing today.
Oh, thanks, Rick.
Yeah.
You too.
Thank you. Why don't we share some of the content about the 4 archetypes that, you know, we've gleaned over many years of doing this work and that have helped us grow to new ways of being.
Good. Should we start with the 4 archetypes in full expression?
Let's do that.
Okay. All right. So the lover, we'll start there. Happy to own that one. The lover in full expression is all about wholeness, connection, unity. It's the sensuality. It's anything to do with the body. And so simply put, that's the lover. The lover just wants, the lover's, you know, statement is, why can't we all just get along and love one another?
Yeah, and to connect at a deep level.
Yes. Yeah.
Beautiful. And the next one on the wheel is the warrior. The warrior's urge is to grow, to seek to expand, explore the world, discover, conquer, set clear boundaries. His element is earth, and the feeling is powerful. I do, and I can.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I love that one. And then the magician is the next one up. The magician is all about perception, being able to perceive your world, to see your world. It's standing on the mountaintop and looking down to see what's the big picture here, what's really going on, to be able to see into things, to make a plan, to have a strategy about things. So we need that magician on board to help us sort of get that big picture. The magician can also step in and really be focused on the details of things, to really take care of the details to make sure that the plan is executed properly.
Absolutely. And that brings us full circle to the sovereign, the king or queen of our lives, the urge for dominion, to bless the realm, to seek to rule the kingdom in a healthy way, to set the course, to make decrees, and again, bless the land. The feeling is wholeness. And the sense of the sovereign in full expression is I am, I exist.
Yeah. So the full picture of who we are is there's a lover part of ourselves that's all about the feeling. That's where our feelings come in and are registered. The warrior is all about the doing, taking action, making things happen. The magician is about perceiving, seeing that big picture. And the sovereign is about knowing the I am. It's who we are. It's at the core of ourselves and being responsible for our realm. So when you put all those together, that's the 360 view of us in full expression. So then, like we've been talking about, parts of ourselves through the course of our lives get put into shadow. And so, you know, what we want to look at, the important part of this is, okay, parts are going into shadow. How do we get them out? So maybe we can do a round, Rick, with talking about just that wounded part and what goes into shadow. And then we can come back around and offer some a tool, some questions that people can use to help do some healing work there.
That's a great idea. Anna, why don't you lead off again with the lover?
Okay, happy to do that. So the lover, again, is all about I feel. And the wound that comes in, the way that the lover gets wounded is our feelings get hurt, but in a deep way. And another aspect of the lover wound is that we lose connection, because lover is all about wholeness. We lose connection probably with a parent, because that's our lifeline to love, to our survival. And so, you know, an example would be, you know, if you have a parent who's got substance abuse or something like that, and sometimes they're present and sometimes maybe they disappear into a bottle, you know, that's a loss. It doesn't have to be, it could be, you know, a parent leaving through divorce, it could be somebody dying, but there are a lot of different ways to lose that connection. And when we do, we start adjusting and adapting. And what goes into shadow when we have that wound is we start to feel invisible, we start to adapt. What goes into shadow is our openness, our vulnerability, our trust, and our aliveness.
So I'll take the warrior. The wound of the warrior is being disempowered, bullied, overwhelmed, made to feel small and powerless. This often happens when we have an abusive parent, an alcoholic parent, or an abusive religious experience, things of that nature. And what we put into shadow when our warrior is wounded is our own confidence, our willingness and ability to take positive action in our life, our decisiveness, and of course, access to our power. That is very painful for many of us.
Yeah, feeling powerless. Yeah, a victim. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. So then let's scoot around to the magician. And the magician gets wounded through being violated in some way, being made to feel extremely unsafe.
Yes.
It's the place where dark and scary things happen, where when dark and scary things happen, you know, we're told to keep secrets. They're in that wound, things aren't clear, so it's sketchy, and you know the magician wants to see things clearly. So this is where a child maybe just doesn't really understand what's happening, can't see things clearly, and so there's a lot of fear that happens with that wound. What we send into shadow is our trust in others, our trust in life, our trust in our own perceptions, our belief in ourselves and our wisdom. So really doubting ourselves a lot and really feeling the need to try and keep everything safe for ourselves and for everybody else. So somebody with a magician wound probably might sense themselves needing a lot of control.
Yeah, boy, I can relate to that one too, Anna.
Yeah.
And that brings us around the wheel again to the sovereign wound. The sovereign wound is we're made to doubt who we are, to feel less than, to feel bad and about ourselves or our family, our community, to unworthy, not enough, and of course, joyless. What we put into shadow when we have a sovereign wound is the sense of self-worth, our gifts, our value, and again, our joy de vivre, the joy for living. That's what happens when our sovereign is wounded.
Yeah. And often what happens, what I've seen and from my own experience is that when we have a core wound in one area, what happens is it forces the other areas to really step up and be
Exactly.
exaggerated,
Overdeveloped even.
overdeveloped, absolutely good word or phrase, overdeveloped to try and make up for the parts that are wounded. So again, we're not really being our true selves. We're being some version of ourselves that has been designed over time to help us survive. So, we do our best to try and survive and keep everything going. But I think, more and more, and in the coaching work that I do, I find that people really long to live in, this phrase is kind of overused now, but live an authentic life. And what we describe in my program about an authentic life is that what you know to be true about yourself on the inside, you're actualizing on the outside so that they match.
Exactly. And one of the things that you and I both know is important on it is not denigrating those survival skills that we learned, the shadow behaviors that we learned. It's to acknowledge them and actually honor them for keeping us alive in impossible situations and getting us to the point where we can now do this work. And it's about lovingly and gently setting aside those old behaviors that no longer serve us and find a new way of being, as you said, that brings us into balance and into wholeness and completeness. That's what this webinar is about. That's what our workshop is about.
Yeah. And I think, the value of this map that we're talking about, this archetypal map, this heart path, is really, the reason that we call these things shadows is because they're hard to see. They're parts of ourselves that we maybe don't even realize that we have, but they're operating, running in the background. So they're in shadow. What we want is a way to recognize, oh, this is from, when the twins were born. This is from, what my father said to me before he left. This is, and to be able to take it apart and see it for what it is. We want our magician to be able to see the pattern fully. So, yeah.
Yeah. And one of the values of having the map and using that map in the presence of other people is, as you said, they can see my shadows that I can't see. So you get to mirror to me, reflect to me a truth that I might not even be aware of until I go, oh, that really is me. Thank you, Hannah, for pointing that out to me, or whoever has had the privilege of doing that. That's the power of doing this work in groups.
But this work is a shortcut.
Yes.
And that's what I love about it, because I'm an Aries. I'm like, okay, cut to the chase. Let's just do it. Let's get it. It's going to take a lot of time.
Speaking of cutting to the chase, why don't we get to some healing questions that might help people see a way out of these various wounds in the quarters?
Love it. All right, let's do it. All right, I'll start off with the lover then. So the questions that we came up for you to help you work the lover wound is, first question, when you were a child, whose love did you lose? Second question, how did you want them to show their love for you? And third question is, how can you show that love for yourself now?
Those are some powerful questions, and I'm grateful we'll have an opportunity to explore those with our participants.
Good.
Good. For the warrior quarter, the questions we came up with, and again, there's 3 of them, is in your early years, which of your primary caretakers, parents, siblings, grandparents, priests, ministers, others, made you feel small or less than? Number 2, how did you want them to make you feel big and powerful? What would that have looked like for you? And thirdly, maybe most importantly, how can you make yourself feel powerful now?
All right, I'm on the magician. The first question for the magician is, when you were a child, who violated your trust or told you that you were stupid or ignorant? Second question, what truth did you want to be known about that violation? And the third question, how can you trust your own perceptions and wisdom, sorry.
Excellent. And notice the last of our 3 questions brings us into the now, into the present moment, where we can actualize these things. Finally, the 3 questions that address the sovereign wound are, from early years, who made you feel like you weren't enough or you had to do more to be loved? Another way to say that, who didn't watch out for your full development? Question 2, How did you want them to see you, and what did you want them to say to you? And the final question that brings us into the moment, how can you reinforce those words about yourself right now?
I invite you to explore those questions. Think about the parts of yourselves that maybe are in shadow. Hopefully these questions will help you get to some of that. Again, there's usually a core wound, so you may not really relate to one or two or three of the areas, but hopefully one of them is going to feel a little bit more, it's going to click for you, and you'll be able to go a little bit deeper. Speaking of going deeper, if you'd like to do some deeper work with this, Rick and I are offering the Heart Path training in Julian, California. It's near San Diego, and it's May 17th through the 19th of this year. And let's see, we have an early bird registration that's available until April 13th. It's a great discount. And anything else you want to add about the event, Rick?
Yeah, I'm going to tell you that the site we're going at is absolutely magnificent. It's up in the hills above San Diego. It is a beautiful camp that's almost brand new, beautiful facilities. Anna and I had the chance to tour it a while back, and we were going, wow, this is going to be such a great space. The food is fantastic. The people are fantastic. The site is fantastic. And the content is unbelievable. Don't miss this opportunity.
If you want to shortcut the path to your fullest expression, and I know a lot of us are feeling really drawn to do that these days, to really stand in our power, to be present, to bring our voice to the chaos in the world and try and make sense of things. I think we each have a piece that we're meant to bring. Hopefully the work that we're going to do with you during that weekend is going to help you really find all the shortcuts right back to your heart, back to center, and back to your power.
That slide follow me is going to show you where to click to join us in Julian in May. We can't wait to see you.